Children say the darndest things. Children can be brutally honest. You've heard other people say these sayings and may have even said them yourself as they've resonated in your heart. These children are just making basic observations about the world that they lived in and making a few statements about them, and it's completely catching us off guard. And instead of pointing our fingers at them and wondering what's wrong with them that they would say something like that, have you ever thought to point the fingers back at yourself and wonder what's wrong with me that such an obvious statement would be so shocking to me? What happened to us where we were once like them, capable of seeing and speaking the truth about our reality without shame? Now we can't even recognize our reality for what it is until a child helps us to be able to see it. What trained us to no longer be able to see elephants in the room? Or, if we can see them, what trained us to not be able to speak about them? The process by which we made that transition is called socialization. It's where we're punished or rewarded for certain behaviors by our parents and by society as a way of learning what behaviors are acceptable and unacceptable within the culture. Realize that much of this process of socialization happens below our conscious awareness. You likely can't remember the moment when your conscious made the decision that I'm no longer going to recognize these elephants in the room. Your subconscious mind stepped in and took over the process on your behalf. You see, human children are some of the most dependent offspring on the planet, often requiring a decade or more of care before they can survive on their own. Most animal species grow to their full adult size in less than a year or two. Just think about some of your pets. So you can imagine that if you're fully dependent on your parents and community in order to stay alive, that it becomes existentially critical that you stay within their favor, or else you can potentially risk your ability to get your own needs and wants met. So when your parents squeezed your hand a little bit harder, all while saying stop through their teeth, all because you wanted to ask that man why his skin was brown, you actually learned a valuable lesson that day. You either learned that it was dangerous for you to notice somebody's skin color, or you learned that it was dangerous for you to mention somebody's skin color. That creates two distinct groups of people. Can you predict which group of people would say, I'm colorblind, I don't see race. But as a matter of fact, I didn't even notice you were black until you mentioned it. And while we're at it, why do you even keep bringing up race? Keep throwing the race card. If you guessed a group of people who were socialized away from even noticing your race, you'd be correct. You'll even hear these people sometimes say that Martin Luther King's dream was all about making us a colorblind world where race no longer matters. And they'll reference his famous dream speech quote to back it up. I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Now, if you're sharp, you may have recognized that nowhere in that quote did he say that we should be colorblind or not be able to notice what someone's color is. What he did say is that we shouldn't be judged by our color. And he even gave us a standard to use, which is the content of our character. That should be a different standard we should be judged by. Because as you'll notice, is when that little kid asks the question about why that man's skin is brown, that kid did not mean it to judge that person negatively or any type of way. Just simply wanted to know an answer to a question about the reality that they see. You taught the kids their colors, and now they notice them. There's nothing innately wrong in that. By the time you learned about Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement, the socialization process was well underway. At that point, you had already committed and resolved to keeping yourself safe by not noticing color. I mean, how can I be judging someone based on their color if I never noticed their color? Such a belief kept you safe, so your subconscious adopted it and rolled with it. And if anybody tried to challenge you on it, you were vigorously willing to defend yourself. But which methods we decide to use in order to try to achieve Dr. Martin Luther King's dream actually matters. If the methods you use cause you to be fearful of even noticing race, then you can't be shocked if you're triggered and hypersensitive to hearing about anybody bringing it up. You're more likely to take a default position of pointing fingers at the person who mentions race first as being the problem and calling them a race baiter. However, one does not need to mention race in order to be a racist. All I have to do is start treating people different based upon the color of their skin alone, and voila, I'm there. But wait, was the little toddler that had wanted to ask why that person's skin color was brown also a race baiter? Of course not. The toddler is loved, innocent, and presumed to be operating in good faith by default. Hence, when they jarred you awake by mentioning race, you were better equipped to receive it because it came from a beloved source. But if the same message comes from an adult, one that you may not have warm and fuzzy feelings towards, one in which you don't trust by default, one in which you don't give the benefit of doubt that they're operating in good faith by default, you're more than likely to be more hostile and defensive when they say it. Your subconscious mind makes up these rules. I didn't. I'm just a messenger trying to make you aware of yourself. And maybe I'm not talking about you specifically. Maybe I'm just talking about your fellow neighbor, your fellow citizen, to help you be able to understand them a little bit better, to be able to empathize with their struggle. You see, we've all been successfully socialized into not noticing the elephants in the room. We all have active, alive, and well subconscious minds that are capable of editing our perception of reality in an attempt to keep us safe. But what kept us safe as children may not be the same thing that's effective for us as an adult to run a harmonious, diverse, effective society. And if my use of the word diverse happens to trigger you, you may want to ask yourself why. Perhaps it's the same reason why you may have been using the colorblind strategy to avoid noticing race and color. Think about it. Look up the word diverse and ask yourself, is there anything inherently evil about that word? I spend a lot of time talking about one group of people who learn not to notice color. What about the other group of people who can, who are successfully able to manage avoiding mentioning it through their conscious minds? Let's assume for a second that you're one of these people, but you insist on being able to say the truth about reality as you see it and not have to walk on eggshells about certain topics. I mean, this is America, right? You do have freedom of speech, right? What if you started building resentment about this? What if you started noticing that people of color can boldly mention race in ways without having those negative consequences the same way you do? Do you think you'd build any anger or resentment about that? And who do you think you would direct that anger or resentment towards? Do you want the answer to those questions? Then like this video, follow this page, and stay tuned for the next video that deals with the truth about cancel culture. If the video's already been posted, you'll see the link to it in the comments on Facebook or in the description on YouTube. Maybe you've liked what you're hearing. It is different from what you're used to hearing. Maybe you've learned something about yourself. Maybe you've learned more about your neighbor or fellow citizen. If so, consider supporting this content for free with a like and a follow. If you think it's a valuable message that others might want to hear, share it as well. And if you feel moved, feel free to send a little cash as a tip to thank me for what this message has meant to you. If you have any further questions, feel free to place them in the comments. The name of this page is Ask Russie for a reason. I'm Chris Russie, teaching people how to empathize with and love our neighbors as we love ourselves, one video at a time. Until next time, love you. Peace.